Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It is hard and frustrating.
More shutdowns in BC, restrictions ramp up ahead of the holidays. Also, rapid testing and booster shots accelerated. Plus,
it is vital that we not only look after ourselves, but after each other as well.
a warning to prepare as extreme cold and winter storm conditions head our way.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. So new restrictions are being introduced in BC.
Over this weekend, we have spent a lot of time understanding as much as we could about what is happening with this variant, how it's being transmitted in places around the world, and what is happening here in British Columbia. And today, I need to announce additional measures.
Starting tomorrow at 11:59 p.m., no indoor organized gatherings, so weddings, funerals, or receptions. Bars and nightclubs will be closed. Gyms, fitness centers, and dance studios shut down. All sports tournaments canceled as well, and a maximum of 6 people per table at restaurants, pubs, and cafes. 50% capacity for seated events regardless of size. That means concerts, sports games, theaters, and movie theaters. Also, non-urgent surgeries are being canceled as of January 4th. How many businesses are now scrambling to respond to the new health orders, faced with a new reality. Some restaurant owners are already reporting a substantial drop in reservations over the holidays. And as John Hernandez reports, it's a heavy blow after months of optimism.
I don't know how to prepare or how to plan anymore.
Sobi Zabadi is just taking in the news. He'll have to restrict dining in his restaurants to 6 people a table for at least a month.
Honestly, it's devastating. Why? Because December is usually our strongest month of the year. And since October, we started to feel like there is a return to pre-pandemic level in terms of sales and revenue.
Cancellations have been pouring in as he tries to fill up his Palestinian restaurant over the holidays. Last week, he had more than 50 seats booked, but now just 8, as large groups are shut out.
It is hard and frustrating, and because sometimes you feel like you don't have control. Sometimes you feel like everything you've done so far, it's really yielding no results, and we're back to square one.
The restaurant industry is among those shaken by the new restrictions issued today, aimed at tempering the surging number of Omicron cases. It's now become the dominant strain in BC.
We are in a very uncertain time. We will be learning more.
Until then, bars, nightclubs, and gyms now must grapple with another onslaught of forced closures.
This is a huge blow. This will create devastation in our industry. At the same time, we are an industry that fights.
The sudden shutdown has prompted calls to governments for equally swift financial supports for small businesses.
We will do everything that we can to get through this, but at the same time, if we are being asked by our provincial government to close our doors, we urgently need financial assistance in order to get through this.
The closures will last until at least January 18th, until more is known about the severity of the variant. And while that's only 4 weeks away, for some businesses just barely hanging on, it could just be the last blow they can't recover from. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
And tonight, 1,308 new COVID cases in BC. This is the highest ever number that we've seen since the beginning of the pandemic. Now, in light of rising case counts, the province is also planning to ramp up rapid testing and booster shots. 700,000 new rapid tests will be in BC in the coming weeks, hoping for 11 million from Ottawa by the end of January. These tests will go to testing sites, schools, care homes, among other places. Now, the pace of booster shots is increasing in January as well to anywhere between 190,000 shots a week to 325,000. But the timeline of getting your booster 6 months after your last shot is not changing. And as Omicron cases surge, we're seeing strategies rapidly change across the country. So let's bring in our Justin McElroy live to talk more about this. Justin, BC planning to increase that testing and the boosters, but how do we compare with the pace of where other provinces are at?
Yeah, and part of the reason people are asking these questions is because other provinces have had different strategies or have announced in the last week that they're going to accelerate rapid testing or third doses. So let's take a look at where we are in BC on that. First, if you take a look at this chart, this is the average number of rapid tests taken per person in every province. And you can see Prince Edward Island, people there have taken average more than 2 shots each. Ontario, 0.65. BC right at the bottom there, just ahead of Newfoundland and Labrador, just 0.06 shots per person. So less than 1 in 10 people on average. Now, when you take a look at third shots, for a while, BC was actually at the top of the pack when it came to delivering third shots to people, and it was seniors and the critically vulnerable. But in the past 2 or 3 days, as lots of provinces have ramped up their testing strategies and getting third shots in people, BC now in the middle of the pack there. Now, there's a couple questions to keep in mind in the weeks ahead. One is whether those provinces can keep up that pace. Ontario giving about 200,000 third doses today. Is that something that's sustainable? And then the second one is just whether the science shows that it's okay to have your third dose 3, 4, 5 months after your second one. The BC government still going with its original strategy of saying you need to wait unless you're critically vulnerable or senior 6 months. We'll have to see in the weeks ahead.
Yeah, I mean, as we've seen throughout the pandemic, things do change pretty quickly, so we'll be watching that for sure. Now, with a record 1,308 cases announced today, Justin, where does that put us on the curve?
Well, you can see the curve is going up in BC faster than at any point in this pandemic and by a rapid amount. And it's what we've seen in a lot of places. We've shown this chart a bunch of times. Red is the active cases, yellow is the rolling average. You can see it's basically a straight line up right now. Hospitalizations still holding steady. That's the thing people are going to be watching in other countries as well in the weeks ahead to see if these cases are as mild as people hope. But if they aren't, you can just see how high those other lines are. And then when you look at where these cases are, well, for the most part, they are in Metro Vancouver right now. The vast majority of cases have more than quadrupled in the Vancouver Coastal Health in the last week and a half. Fraser Health about a tripling, and you can see things starting to go up on the island. This we've heard with Omicron, it's more transmissible. It makes sense that it would impact people in denser populations that perhaps thought they weren't vulnerable before. Now they are. So the province has adjusted now with their new guidelines. We'll have to see in the weeks ahead how much people do as well.
All right, Justin McElroy live tonight. Thank you. It's now the second Christmas where the pandemic has upended holiday plans, and people across BC and across the country are feeling the effects of that stress and uncertainty. As the CBC's Michelle Gassoub reports, there are ways to cope with the feeling that the pandemic is never ending.
You isolated last winter, got your vaccine doses in the summer, and have continued to mask up. So how, you might be asking, are we back here again?
I think all of us had a collective, here we go again, feeling.
Just know you're not alone.
But if you're told in the summertime, this will be over by Christmas and you'll be in for a treat, and that treat didn't come, that's called frustrative non-reward. People get cranky and frustrated. And so I think many people, myself included, were optimistic in the summertime thinking, with the vaccines, maybe we'll be traveling. And I booked a trip for Christmas. I had to cancel as well.
Surging case counts now colliding with the stresses of the holidays and that feeling that just 2 weeks ago, things were going to be okay.
Anytime we have something unexpected happen, what I end up working on with people is how to come to a place of acceptance. And acceptance isn't sort of passive having to suck it up. That's not what we want at all. It's more about doing what the situation requires.
A high level of vaccination in BC means small gatherings are still allowed. For some people, that will only mean more anxiety, but you can control what you choose to do.
I like the idea of thinking ahead and seeing whether the restrictions make sense. Is it safe for me to go to a restaurant if I'm seeing Granny? That's a really wise, informed form of reasoning things through.
Christmas can be a stressful time for families, even under normal circumstances. So it's important to accept not everyone will be okay with the same level of risk.
Whoever has the highest safety threshold, that's probably going to set the tone for most family gatherings.
While it may feel like Groundhog Day, remember that starting tomorrow, the days will start getting longer again. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
All right, another big story happening tonight. Freezing rain is already hitting parts of the Fraser Valley, including Abbotsford and Chilliwack. Sheets of ice on cars, on the ground, and the province is urging all of us to get ready for this extreme cold, power outages, and slick streets in the coming days. Environment Canada says periods of heavy snow and freezing rain are also likely in many parts of BC between now and New Year's Day. People are urged to prepare for frostbite and hypothermia by dressing in layers and staying indoors. An emergency kit with up to 1 week of supplies in the event of a power outage is also recommended. Other recommendations include making sure you have a full tank of gas, a snow scraper, food, and water in the event you get stranded on the road.
I urge British Columbians to place close attention to weather forecasts and road closures. Focus on weather alerts for your area from Environment and Climate Change Canada. It is vital that we not only look after ourselves, but after each other as well.
The province is also adding almost 2,400 additional emergency shelter spaces for people in need of a warm, dry, and safe place to stay during extreme weather. Johanna Wagstaff is off this week, so we bring in Nick Czernkovich. Nick, a lot of warnings from the province that things are going to get really bad. People need to be prepared. What are you expecting?
Yeah, Anita, we're looking at a whole mess of winter weather here over the next sort of 24 to 48 hours, and it really kind of depends on where you are. Let me show you the warnings that Environment Canada's got out. Now, the areas in pink here are freezing rain warnings. That includes places like Metro Vancouver and up the Fraser, and that's more for this evening, and then it switches over to rainfall. But through the interior, we're looking at snowfall totals, like, say, for example, along the Coquihalla, we could see upwards to 40 centimeters of snowfall. Highway 3, a little bit less, around 20 centimeters of snow, and then we've got snowfall warnings in areas as well. This is a messy system, and it's going to last for about 24 to 48 hours, depending on where you are. Doesn't look like much on the satellite and radar image, but I'll show you the forecast map here. So we've got some freezing precipitation with temperatures right around the 0 mark. Then we start to warm up. That switches over to rainfall as we head through the overnight period tonight. Still snow, though, through the higher elevation and through the interior. Basically, a rainfall event through Wednesday, kind of tapers off into Thursday, and then we get more in the way of snowfall coming Friday and Saturday, of course, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Here's a look at the next few hours, though, as we head through tonight. If you've got travel plans, watch for icy roads this evening. It turns to rainfall for tomorrow, a brief warm-up before it cools down again for the weekend.
All right, and we'll talk a little bit more about that weekend coming up. Thanks, Nick.
You bet.
Now that commercial traffic is moving over the Coquihalla, Highway 3 between Hope and Princeton is open to non-essential travel. Restrictions have also been lifted on Highway 99 from Pemberton to Lillooet, but large commercial vehicles are still not permitted on that section of the route. The province has cautioned travelers using Highway 3 and 99 to drive according to winter conditions on the mountainous routes, where weather can change quickly. And a 70-year-old Surrey man has been arrested and charged with child porn offenses. Officers say their 20-month-long investigation led to the arrest of Santh Mungat on December 15th. He's been charged with 1 count of luring a child under 16 and 1 count of possessing child porn. He's been released with strict conditions. He can't have access to the internet and can't spend time at parks, swimming pools, playgrounds, or anywhere children and teens are likely to be. He is not allowed to form relationships with anyone under the age of 16. His court appearance is scheduled for January 4th. Well, Christmas can be a tough time of year for those in recovery struggling with addiction. Surrey's Phoenix Society is trying to brighten the mood with a holiday twist on their music therapy program. The group's residents belted out songs like Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Silent Night, and of course, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. As you heard a moment ago, the society says music therapy has been an integral part of their treatment program for more than 6 years. Residents say the program is cathartic and helps them express their emotions when they didn't know how to process them on their own. And a bountiful silver lining for families in need after the Vancouver Canucks had their weekend games postponed due to travel concerns. Truckloads of food at risk of going to waste diverted from Rogers Arena to the Salvation Army and the Greater Vancouver Food Bank. Just how much food will be going to help others? Well, enough meant to feed 37,000 fans.
In many cases, they can take as much as they want. As much as they feel they can turn around in the next 24, 48, 72 hours, they can take and we can provide. And it feels fantastic when that happens, when it all works out for us.
The welcome surprise included everything from crab legs and shrimp to pasta and fresh produce. Of course, lots of hamburgers and hot dogs as well. Let's go back to our top story now. 1,308 cases of COVID in BC today. That's the highest number ever recorded since the start of the pandemic in this province. And today, new restrictions to help combat the quick spread of the Omicron variant. Let's bring in Dr. Murthy, who is live with us. Thanks for being here tonight.
Good afternoon, evening, Anita.
Dr. Murthy, Dr. Henry today giving a dire warning about transmissibility of Omicron, saying most people in the province will get exposed at some point. Can you break down for us so it's easy to understand how transmissible is this variant?
It's very transmissible and surprisingly so. You see how fast it's taken over from Delta in places like the United Kingdom, South Africa, and New York City, where within the span of just a week or two, it's become the predominant variant. It's out there, it's in our communities, it's at large numbers of cases as we've seen today, and its transmissibility is very high. I'm not going to quantify it here because it's going to change as the days go on.
Yeah, as everything has in this pandemic for sure. So what do you make of the new restrictions coming in today? Do you think they're enough?
Yeah, and so the amount of COVID right now circulating in our communities, we're going to need to have to do something to restrict its transmissibility. And providing public health restrictions is one of those things. Remember, there's lots of things to help protect every single person, whether it's mask wearing, vaccines, and public health restrictions. All of those things are going to need to be deployed right now. And so public health restrictions, without a doubt, are going to be part of that equation.
We know since the beginning of the pandemic that indoor personal gatherings have really been a spot of high transmissibility, but with these restrictions, they're not really going to be enforced. So are you confident that they will help to stop the spread?
Yeah, I think given the transmissibility of this variant, I think it's probably going to delay the spread possibly, but it may not stop it altogether. I think it may give us time to provide more vaccines to folks, to provide more supports to people who need supports, and to prepare our hospitals and healthcare workers for a surge of cases. But whether it will prevent cases altogether, it's difficult to say.
Okay, so hearing that, and today I'm getting a ton of messages, and I'm also seeing a lot of this online. People are fed up. A lot who have been following the rules, who are double vaxxed, and now they're asking for what? What do you say to them? How do you convince them to keep going?
Yeah, this is hard. This is hard for everybody. This is hard for us healthcare workers who work in intensive care units who have been doing this for the past 2 years and are being asked to do it again. And I think we're all struggling right now. And I think the most important thing is we all sort of struggle together with this in an equitable way, so that we all can see each other's needs and find out what we can do to help each other.
What's it like in your intensive care unit right now?
Like in general, it's tired and everyone is stressed in general because it's been a long time of people sort of dealing with COVID. But I think in general, we're waiting for these next surge of cases to arrive.
BC also talking today about increased rapid testing, but really it's nothing compared to some other provinces. Do you think the province has failed in making these tests more readily available, especially over the holidays?
Yeah, and I think Omicron has caught many places off guard in general. I think with the availability of vaccines, for example, and now with the availability of rapid tests, every place in the world is scrambling for every single thing that they can get, and rapid tests is one of those things. Were we caught off guard in British Columbia? I would say probably yes. And I think we're scrambling now to make these rapid tests available. Looking at the lineups for the PCR tests over the past couple of days tells us we need to do a lot better in getting tests out to the people.
Dr. Murthy, we talk to you a lot, but today I'm getting a sense of, I'm getting that sense of tiredness from you. Can you just talk to us a little bit about how you are feeling?
No, I think in general, most folks are seeing the case count rise and they're getting a bit sort of saddened, but not unexpectedly so. We knew that variants would emerge if we didn't get vaccines out to the world as quickly as possible, and that's how pandemics go. We also have the idea that all pandemics will end eventually, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later, and hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel that we'll all start to see.
We're definitely all hoping for that. Hang in there, Dr. Murthy, and thank you for being with us again today.
Take care, Anita.
Well, we don't have access to a lot of them here, but rapid testing is fast becoming one of the most widely used tools to curb the spread of infection. Instructions from a pharmacist on how to take one coming up. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. Mohawks outside of Ottawa have launched a series of cultural experiences for visitors wishing to understand more about the people and their traditions. They say revelations about residential school graves are behind the awakening. As Stu Mills shows us, visitors can make a lacrosse stick, try their hand at basket weaving, or tour a brand new museum with a fresh look at the Mohawk experience.
The Mohawk traditions here at Akwesasne are rich. The new museum captures the skill, the resourcefulness, and the kinship of the people. Penny Peters says when the scale of the residential school graves began to be clear, people started reaching out.
We want to tell our story from our territory and, make sure that it's accurate.
Soon, Akwesasne Travel was born, and a new project to help outsiders understand the history and culture of the people living here. The museum is part of that.
And we would trade them with the Algonquins or the Huron.
But now Akwesasne Travel is also offering a series of immersive tours that give people a hands-on experience. Visitors to Carey Hill's weaving workshop will discover for themselves the genius of the delicate-looking basket woven from sweetgrass that's strong enough to carry thousands of kilos of corn over its lifetime. A tour of Evan Cree's lacrosse factory will give visitors a sense of the incredible process of steam bending a piece of wood into the famous crooked shape of a lacrosse stick. Manufacturing here is keeping lacrosse and Mohawk culture alive far beyond Akwesasne. The tours range from a few hours to a whole day. For Peters, it helps tell the story of how Mohawks flourished on the islands of the St. Lawrence long before Europeans began pulling their boats ashore.
Since the beginning of time, we've had tourism. We've welcomed people. I don't think you guys would be here if we didn't have that type of mentality. So tourism's always been a part of our culture.
Stu Mills, CBC News, on the Akwesasne Mohawk territory.
Ontario and Quebec are together responsible for about 75% of the country's cases right now. But as Marina von Stackelberg shows us, the two provinces with different responses to the same daunting challenge of trying to limit the spread of Omicron.
At a COVID-19 testing center in Montreal, more long lines.
I got some symptoms, and like in Montreal, it's a big area, so it gets pretty risky. So we just wanted to make sure that we didn't have any COVID or anything.
Quebec has broken another record, more than 5,000 new cases. It comes the day after the province shut down schools, bars, gyms, and movie theaters. Montreal's mayor, who has COVID herself, has now declared a state of emergency.
We will be able to purchase protective and screening equipment for essential workers.
With few new restrictions, the focus in Ontario is on boosters.
Just a few weeks ago, we were at 30,000. Then we accelerated to 60,000 doses a day. And I'm happy to say that over 206,000 doses were administered yesterday.
If you haven't taken any shots, get your first, get your second, or get your booster.
Ontario's premier got his vaccine in a photo op. But many in his province have been less successful. Hundreds hoping for a booster on board a Toronto Go bus left without a shot.
I just think it's completely ridiculous, like, that we have to go through this kind of craziness because they're pushing everyone to get the shot, and then we try to get the shot and there's no shots.
In Ottawa, they lined up for free rapid test kits. They left with wristbands, told to come back later when the shipment showed up.
Sorry about that.
I am not surprised, but I'm actually really saddened that we're in this situation.
Everyone's going to be exposed in a matter of weeks unless it is slowed by policy.
This epidemiologist says while it might be hard to convince the public to go along with a lockdown, Ontario's current plan isn't working.
Before this, I was saying that Delta was likely the most contagious respiratory virus we've seen in modern times. Omicron leaves it in the dust.
Even as the threat of Omicron grows, the U.S. remains the country with the highest toll from COVID-19. More than 800,000 and 808,000 have died, with less than 62% of the population being double vaxxed. Now, President Joe Biden is once again trying to convince the holdouts. And as Travis Dunrod reports, he even found an unexpected ally to set an example.
As Omicron takes hold as the dominant variant in the U.S., spreading with stunning speed, President Joe Biden tried to reassure Americans they are largely protected, but only if they've been vaccinated.
All these people who have not been vaccinated, you have an obligation to yourselves, to your family, and quite frankly, I know I get criticized for this, to your country. Get vaccinated now. It's free. It's convenient. I promise you, it saves lives. And I honest to God believe it's your patriotic duty.
Biden telling those that have gotten their COVID-19 vaccine they can continue with holiday plans, but warning the rest they could face hospitalization or death. On testing, his administration is gearing up in a big way. 500 million at-home rapid antigen tests have been secured by the U.S. government to distribute to Americans for free. Across the country, more resources, including testing sites, supply of PPE, and vaccinators. To help hospitals dealing with the latest COVID surge, he's calling on more military support.
In addition, I've directed the Pentagon to mobilize an additional 1,000 troops to be deployed to help staff local hospitals and expand capacity. That's 1,000 military doctors, nurses, and medics.
With vaccinations still a political hot button, particularly in red states, and after this revelation from the former president over the weekend.
Both the president and I are vaxxed, and did you get the booster?
Yes.
I got it too. Okay, so...
Don't. That's all. There's a very tiny group over there.
A rare moment of praise from the current president.
Former President Trump announced he had gotten his booster shot. It may be one of the few things he and I agree on. People with booster shots are highly protected. Join them. Join us.
Now Biden is hoping his message today, his call for unity, punches through as the White House pushes for more Americans to get their 3 shots to help stem the worrying spread of Omicron. Travis Dunrod, CBC News, Washington.
Now, BC isn't handing out free COVID-19 rapid test kits like some other provinces are at the moment. But in Alberta, the scramble to secure those kits has led to some confusion about how to use them correctly. An Edmonton pharmacist takes our colleague Pippa Reed through the process.
So in front of me here, I have the Rapid Response COVID-19 Antigen Test Kit. So this is the rapid antigen test kits that are part of the Take Home program. So this here is the nasal swab. So this is actually the swab that's going to be going into the nostril. This here is your buffer solution. So this solution is squeezed into the extraction tube that you see here on the stand. So we squeeze the buffer solution into the extraction tube, and that's where we collect the specimen. This here is your cassette. We place the drops onto this cassette, and this is where we actually find out whether we're screened positive or negative for carrying the virus. You're going to tilt your head back slightly, just at about a 70-degree angle. You're going to gently insert the swab into your nostril about ½ an inch up, and for 5 to 10 seconds, you're going to swirl. Okay, after you swirl, you're going to compress your nostril and rotate that swab for another 5 to 10 seconds. Okay, so now you're going to take it out and you're going to insert your swab into your extraction tube, and you're going to actually tilt it a little bit so that the entire swab is submerged in that solution. And now you want to actually swirl it and mix it in there and squeeze the tube as well so that you're getting the entire content submerged in there. Yeah. And you're going to put 3 drops right into the cassette there where you see the picture of the drops. Now we set a 15-minute timer. You are clear. Congratulations. You have a negative result. There is nothing in your test line. Your control line is there, so we did the test correctly. You did the test correctly. So congratulations for that. You now officially know how to self-administer a rapid antigen test.
What I've seen wave after wave is a reactive government as opposed to a proactive approach to COVID.
That's what Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau has to say about the government's handling of COVID-19. She looks back on the past 12 months and what she says the government could have handled differently. A year in review coming up.
Good evening, I'm Peter Mansbridge. Tonight we'll talk to a rock star who is helping the hungry here in Canada. We'll also go to the streets to talk to a police officer about why the party's over for drinking drivers. But first in the news tonight, there has been a big oil spill off the southern tip of Vancouver Island. A tanker ran aground on the American side of the Juan de Fuca Strait. More than 400,000 liters of oil spilled out of two.
The air over Port Angeles Harbor is damp and heavy with the stench of oil. The water is covered with it. Thick Alaskan crude which spilled from this tanker after it ran aground.
We can't pinpoint a lot of these answers until we can make assessments, and there's so many different criteria that have to be put into this with the variance and the types of currents and the geography of the area.
Why the ship ran aground is not yet known, but the effects were immediate and obvious. This area was rich in fish and waterfowl. Now ducks try vainly to swim through the oil. Most will die, a few can be saved.
Their survival rate's not real good. I think they said only a third of the ones they got over in Grace Harbor survived, so the sooner we get them back, the better.
Emergency crews circled the tanker with oil booms to stop the spill from spreading. Oil retrieval boats skimmed the water to catch the oil which escaped, but some slicks have been spotted as far as 20 kilometers away. Workers can now only try to minimize the damage, slowly collecting the oil along the shore. Residents of the area have tried to keep tankers away from these shores. They fought off and canceled the proposed construction of an oil port, but now the oil has come anyway.
I feel lousy. This is my home, and it turned into a garbage dump. I don't like a garbage dump here. I don't like anybody dumping garbage here. Been here forever. They've first started a little bit at a time, one tanker at a time, then several tankers. Now it's a garbage dump, and we knew it was going to happen.
Atlantic Richfield owns the oil and the ship which spilled it. The company says it will pay for the cleanup.
Come in and assist and work, take over the spill. We accept full responsibility for the spill, and we'll clean it up.
It's less than 20 kilometers from here to the shore of Vancouver Island. Coast Guard officials hope the spill won't spread that far, but they say they just don't know. Jonathan Mann, CBC News, Port Angeles, Washington.
We are following several stories tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Dress for the weather. Ensure you and your loved ones have enough food and supplies. Check on vulnerable neighbours. And above all else, be safe.
BC's Public Safety Minister is warning people to brace for another blast of harsh winter weather. A freezing rain warning is in effect for much of Vancouver, Metro Vancouver, and it's already starting to fall in parts of Chilliwack and Abbotsford. Up to 40 centimeters of snow could fall on the newly reopened Coquihalla Highway, and up to 20 centimeters for Highway 3, which is now open to non-essential traffic. Below zero temperatures could linger throughout the province until New Year's Day. Shelters are also being opened across BC to get vulnerable people out of the cold. And as we heard earlier, rising Omicron cases are forcing provinces to respond, but the new rules are uneven from province to province. Lindsay Duncombe tracks how the country is lurching into action and leaving many Canadians uncertain.
Across the country, plans are changing.
We had a couple of Christmas parties that we were supposed to go to yesterday and today, and we've decided not to go.
It sucks. Like I got jabbed twice, and now we can't go back to normal. I mean, I'll get the third one if we can go back to normal, but...
Restrictions put in place in British Columbia just last Friday, not tough enough for Omicron.
And we're also seeing what we call explosive outbreaks, which have to do with larger numbers of people being exposed at the same time.
Starting tomorrow midnight, nightclubs and bars must close. Gyms shut down. Scheduled surgeries will be postponed after New Year's. All indoor events, including weddings and funerals, cancelled. The limit on personal gatherings, 10 people only, stays the same with this warning.
To keep those numbers as small as possible.
Vancouver's Convention Centre will once again become a mass vaccination site for boosters. People still need to wait 6 months since their second dose. Alberta reduced that timeline to 5 months today and opened boosters for anyone over 18.
And we are going to move heaven and earth to get as many booster shots to Albertans as possible.
After relaxing restrictions last week, the province reduced capacity at large events and asked Albertans to cut their contacts in half. PEI joined Newfoundland and Labrador in making all incoming travelers self-isolate. In Nova Scotia, where daily new cases have broken records for 6 days straight, the Premier asked people only to get tested if they have symptoms.
We're asking a lot of Nova Scotians. We're sorry to do that. I'm sorry to have to do that.
With the situation changing so quickly, the reality is the same right across the country. In order to stay safe, Canadians need to be flexible. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
BC Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau says the past 12 months have demonstrated the urgent need to act on climate change. She's pushing the provincial government for transparency on the crisis as well as others. The MLA for the Cowichan Valley spoke with our provincial affairs reporter Mira Baines and looks back on 2021 with an eye on the year to come.
The BC Green Party leader says overall it's been a disappointing year for the government. Sonia Furstenau is clear. Dealing with climate change is urgent after a year in which the province dealt with devastating fires, a heat dome that killed more than 500 people, and catastrophic flooding after a series of atmospheric rivers. She says the government should have used climate change as a lens when allocating money in the last budget.
What we have to do is shift our thinking around climate-driven weather events, because they should not in any way be seen as unprecedented. They should be seen as anticipated. And if we are taking that position that the scientists have been very clear, we will see more severe and more frequent weather-related events, then we have to shift our decision-making and our policy-making to recognize and acknowledge that this is the reality that we are in now. And it is costly because we have failed to make good decisions.
Furstenau wants to see the government address inequity when dealing with climate change policies that will affect people living in communities like Lytton, BC, which will need to be completely rebuilt after a massive fire tore through the town in late June.
It is the people who can least afford these pressures who are impacted the most by climate and by the pandemic and by these ongoing disasters. what we need from governments in the example of something like Lytton is a clear explanation of what are the outcomes government's trying to achieve, what's informing those decisions, and how are they going to measure success, and answering a question of the people of Lytton about, for example, what's a net zero community. Before a government insists on that kind of outcome, they need to explain and provide the evidence and the information about why they're striving for that and what are the benefits of it.
First Now is also looking for more public accountability from the Ministry of Health as the COVID pandemic enters its fifth wave in BC.
There's a lot of areas where they have not been transparent about data, about hospitalization of people after they are considered no longer infectious. We have had a long-standing challenge with this government to be clear about why they are not providing rapid tests to people the way that other provinces are right now. And we have, what I've seen wave after wave is a reactive government as opposed to a proactive approach to COVID.
2021 saw the BC Green Party continuing to deal with a shift in the power dynamic after a provincial election last year. First Now is calling for more consensus on major issues affecting the province from the majority-holding NDP.
The level of collaboration is obviously significantly less under this majority government, despite the efforts of both of the opposition parties to present that offer and that opportunity over and over again. I'm concerned about some of the trends we've seen over the course of this year. The closing of debate on those bills, the passage of the Freedom of Information, the changes to the FOIPA bill, which really put a cost on access to information.
First Now is one of two Green MLAs in government. She says they've pushed hard on protecting old-growth forests and supports for mental health. Looking ahead to 2022, she hopes more people will join the Greens.
Yeah, it's really important for us to, obviously, to attract more people, but importantly, diversity. And we've had a number of approaches that we're taking, but mostly it is about connecting with diverse communities. It's about connecting with people where they're at, not waiting for them to come to us, but us reaching out and participating, really working from a place of wanting to connect.
First Now says her goal is a relationship between people and the government that's based on trust and transparency. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, we're in for a cold snap. Temperatures dropping below zero for the lower mainland and falling even more around the province. We'll have the full forecast and we'll look at how the wind chill can make the frosty air feel even more biting. Stay with us. And at 6:42, you're looking at a live shot of beautiful Whistler. Lots of snow falling at the Olympic Park there. We've got more from Nick Czernkovich and the weather coming up.
Oh, how I wish I could sing like an angel. I'd sing carols so high and sweet. Oh, if I had the voice of an angel, I'd be singing a sweet child asleep. Oh, how I wish I had the wings of an angel. Singing with glory bright. Oh, if I had the wings of an angel, I'd be rocking that sweet child at night. Christmas angel, so long ago. angel. I'd sing carols so high and sweet. Oh, if I had the voice of an angel, I'd be singing that sweet child asleep. I'd be singing that sweet child asleep.
In the year 2050, how will BC look? From agriculture to cities, how will climate change life? Don't miss 2050 Degrees of Change, a CBC Vancouver original podcast, now available.
And let's bring in Nick Czernkovich again on the weather. Nick, it is winter solstice, so that means the least amount of daylight in the entire year.
It is, yeah. Now, the positive spin of that, of course, is that from here, the days get longer. At least the daylight gets longer for us. But we are kicking off winter with some pretty nasty weather. We've got winter storm warnings, as I mentioned, through the BC interior. We've got snowfall warnings. We've also got freezing rain warnings as well. Some very poor travel conditions over the next 24 to 48 hours, depending on where you are with this system. Now, for Metro Vancouver and up the Fraser, we're looking at freezing rain that switches over to rainfall as we move through tonight. We get this sort of push of warm air through the overnight, and then basically rainfall event down across most of the lower mainland, still through the higher elevations, and in the interior, though, we're looking at snowfall, and some totals could reach 40 plus centimeters. So, I mean, really a significant snowfall event. And again, that's up along the Coquihalla as well, Highway 3, anywhere here that you see blue on the map, we're looking at significant amounts of snowfall. This whole thing kind of tapers off into Thursday morning. Thursday, the risk of a few spotty showers, but for the most part stays dry. But then as we head into Friday, or Thursday night rather, and into Friday morning, we've got another system pushing down, and this is going to be a bit of a mix as well. We've got some showers to start off the day on Friday, but the forecast model's actually suggesting the temperatures drop enough that we're going to see accumulating snows for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And there's a chance we could see a significant amount of snow for that. And I'll show you that in the long-range forecast. For the next about 48 hours or so, it's a rainfall event, 50, 60 millimeters of rain, depending on where you are across Metro Vancouver. We're also looking at winds that'll be gusting upwards to about 50 kilometers per hour for the morning before they start to taper off. So pretty blustery day out there for tomorrow. In the broader sense, this is what we're looking at in terms of temperatures. Not changing much across the province, but we do have quite a bit of snowfall through the BC interior. Again, some of those passes are going to be hammered with snowfall. Even Whistler looking upwards to about 30 centimeters of snow. Now, when we go into the long-range forecast, we actually see a bump in our temperatures there. Then Thursday, they start to drop. Friday, a mix. And then Christmas Eve into Christmas Day, we're still a little bit far out in terms of the forecast, so it's hard to pinpoint how much, but I'm going to give you fair warning here. Right now, I've got 5+ centimeters of snow. There's a potential for a fair deal of snowfall. We'll have to track that as we move through the next couple of days.
Okay, we'll definitely keep checking in with you on that, Nick. Thank you.
You bet.
Well, winter has officially arrived in Canada, and as the mercury drops, many of us Look beyond the temperature reading and wonder what it feels like. CBC meteorologist Christy Klemenega looks at the heated debate. Does wind chill matter?
Wind chill. For some, it's the be-all, end-all term that matters, and for others, it's just a made-up number. So what is the truth about wind chill? Let's clear up some misconceptions. Up first, wind chill doesn't exist. While it is different than temperature, wind chill is a real value calculated using the temperature and the wind speed to give you an idea of what it feels like on your skin when you step outside. Next up, you should always dress by the thermometer. You may say that the temperature is only -5, I don't need a hat, and that might be true if it's a calm day, but if that wind starts picking up, I can tell you from experience, frostbite is no joke. What that wind chill value is really telling you is how fast your skin will freeze. So if your wind chill is about -30, it only takes 10 to 30 minutes for you to get frostbite. If it's a really cold and blustery day and that wind chill's up to -50, frostbite can happen in just minutes. Wind chill doesn't affect objects. Wind chill isn't as relevant when you're looking at inanimate objects. I mean, you don't have to worry about your car getting frostbite, but it can cool things down a little bit faster if it's warmer than the air outside. Kind of like blowing on a hot cup of coffee to cool it down so you can drink it a little faster. Now, that being said, if it's -5 degrees out, but the wind chill's -20, do you need to plug it in? Well, no. The object will never cool down more than that outside air temperature. If your car's been sitting outside and it's already -5, that wind can blow all at once. Your car's staying at -5. Extreme cold warnings ignore wind chill. Environment Canada does factor in wind chill when it's issuing its extreme cold warnings, but depending on where you are, you may see that warning a little later or sometimes not at all. In Alberta and southern Saskatchewan, you need a wind chill or temperature of -40 for at least 2 hours before you see a warning. But in Toronto, that number jumps down to -30. Some people just use the wind chill to exaggerate how cold it is. This is definitely true, and maybe we're all a little guilty of exaggerating things a little bit when we're recounting our winters, but because of the dangers that come with cold temperatures and extremely cold wind chills, even if the term can be used to blow things a little bit out of proportion, if it stops people from getting frostbite, it's probably worth it.
That's CBC meteorologist Christy Klemenega reporting from Edmonton. And yeah, that looks like some serious cold for sure. 'Tis the season for bright lights as people across the country light up night sky on the darkest day of the year. We'll take a tour across Canada to see how homes are decorated for the holidays.
You wouldn't think this pile of poop from this rhino would have anything to do with this. But the Toronto Zoo and Zoo Share have worked together to create Poo Power. It starts here.
Rhinos actually poop in a pile. It's called a midden. At this point, we're sitting at about 500 to 600 pounds in a day. Very physical. Yeah, as you can see behind me, that's a lot of manure. Open. Good boy. Does the smell ever bother you, or are you totally used to it now? When the rhinos poop fresh, it is very pungent, and so it can be, sometimes I think some people call it offensive. I'm so used to it now that it doesn't bother me that much.
With over 5,000 animals, we do produce an awful lot of manure every single year. By diverting our waste manure to the biodigester, not only are we trying to deal with the amount of manure waste that we're producing every year, but we're producing a renewable energy source for the Ontario hydro grid.
You can see all the fiber component, you can see the hay strands. What we do is we put it in our manure bins and our material collections. We'll grab all of our manure on site, and if it's going to be repurposed for a biogas digester, that's where it's going to head.
The zoo manure arrives from the zoo on a regular basis. Once the zoo manure is mixed in with that food waste, it goes into our receiving tanks where it is then pumped into the pasteurizer building. Then the two organic streams together go into our digestion tank where they make biogas. We're just going to go up to the roof of the digester here. You can get yourself a nice view of the area around our plant, but also we can see some of the equipment that we've got installed on the roof of the digester. After the digestion is complete and the organic matter has released almost all the gas that it's going to release, it goes into our end storage tank where we store the digestate and the biogas that we produce. That digestate is essentially fertilizer, and twice a year we empty the tank, we load it into tankers and drive it about 10 kilometers north of here to some of the agricultural lands within the Rouge Park.
It's a process that's entirely self-sufficient, and one Daniel Bita loves to share with others through tours. He also hopes to expand the facility one day.
We make on an annual basis enough power for 250 homes a year, and the heat that we make from burning the gas to make the electricity is then used to keep the whole process going. We're taking what other people call waste and we turn it into energy and fertilizer. So we're really, extracting value where others see waste, and that's what excites me on a day-to-day basis about biogas in general.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
The Push International Performing Arts Festival returns. Enjoy theater, dance, music, and multimedia by local, national, and international artists. Visit pushfestival.ca for tickets and more information. And stream holiday episodes of your favorite CBC shows like Schitt's Creek and The Great Canadian Baking Show with the free CBC Gem app. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca.
The holiday season means many Canadians have put up a tree, and with that, the seasonal debate over whether to buy a real one or opt for artificial. As Aaron Collins tells us, the question has even greater stakes considering the climate crisis.
Scouts have been selling Christmas trees in this Calgary lot for nearly 60 years.
We have people that have been coming here. It's their family tradition, and they come here every year for decades.
And what makes a great Christmas tree hasn't really changed much.
Big puffy ones and nice tall ones.
Tall and puffy.
Puffy and tall.
But in the midst of a climate crisis, there are some new considerations too. Like, is it still okay to use a real tree at all?
Absolutely. If you're replacing a fake tree every couple years because the lights go or it's starting to lose its bushiness, that's a cost to the environment right there.
So what is better for the environment? Real trees like these or an artificial one like this? This expert has crunched the numbers.
In most cases across Canada, I would say that a real tree has the edge. It's a little bit better for the environment.
Well, turns out a real Christmas tree can have a lower carbon footprint if it's grown responsibly and locally, unless...
If you're going to go with an artificial tree, the trick is to hold on to it for at least that decade or 12 years or so in order to offset that footprint.
And what about that family trip to the bush to cut down your own Christmas tree?
Taking the occasional tree out here and there helps the forest. It manages the forest, lets the other trees get bigger and stronger.
So cutting down the right tree makes all the difference.
If we're looking at a grouping of trees like this, which one would make sense to harvest?
Here we have a little cluster of 3 trees. Ideally, you take 2 of those out. The third one has a great chance to grow and become strong. Social distancing for trees.
One final tip for a greener Christmas: if you do get a real tree when the holidays are over, make sure to recycle it. So if you're looking for a Christmas tree and to protect the environment this holiday season, heading out to a place like this and cutting down your own just might be your best bet. Aaron Collins, CBC News, west of Calgary.
Great shot there by Aaron Collins. Okay, it is the darkest day of the year, and to look on the bright side, the long nights make the lights shine all the brighter, and there are definitely bright lights in many Canadian neighborhoods. People have unleashed their holiday creativity with some pretty impressive displays. Here's a sample of what's making the season bright across the country. colorful lights. Love it. Thanks for sticking with us tonight. We are back tomorrow with the most up-to-date health information across and ahead of your holidays. And Adrian Dix will be live on CBC Radio 1 with our Bal Bratch at noon. Good night.